Blood doesn't wash off marble floors as easily as you'd think, and neither does betrayal. Alina Reyes learned both lessons the night she walked into her luxury Seoul apartment expecting dinner and found her boyfriend buried between her best friend's thighs instead. 20 minutes later, she was drowning her humiliation in whiskey at an underground Gangnam club. 2 hours after that, she was in bed with a dangerous stranger whose eyes promised violence and whose hands felt like salvation. By morning, she'd discover she just slept with Seoul's most feared crime boss, her ex-boyfriend's uncle. Follow this story to the end. Drop a like and comment with your city so I can see how far this chaos travels. The apartment smelled like vanilla and lies. Alina stood frozen in the doorway of her own bedroom, shopping bags still dangling from numb fingers, watching two bodies writhe against her Egyptian cotton sheets, the ones she'd bought after saving for 3 months. The candles she loved flickered on the nightstand, casting shadows across skin that should have been hers to touch, but belonged instead to Sarah Lim, her closest friend since university. And beneath Sarah, grunting like an animal who couldn't be bothered to lock the damn door, was Dae Minho, her boyfriend of 2 years. The Louis Vuitton bag hit the floor first, then her keys. The sound made Minho's head snap up, eyes wide with the stupid shock of someone caught mid-thrust, and for one breathless second, nobody moved. Sarah gasped and scrambled for the sheet. Minho opened his mouth like words could fix this. Alina turned and walked out. She didn't scream, didn't throw anything, didn't demand explanations she already understood in her bones. That she'd been boring, convenient, easy to cheat on while she worked 70-hour weeks building someone else's marketing empire. Her heels clicked against the hallway tile with mechanical precision as Minho's voice chased her out, babbling apologies that sounded like static. Alina, wait. Fuck. It's not... She slammed the front door so hard the frame cracked. Outside, rain hammered the Seoul streets in sheets, turning neon signs into bleeding watercolor smears. Alina stood beneath the apartment building's awning and felt nothing, not anger, not sadness, just a hollow space where her chest used to be and mascara melting down her face in black rivers. Her phone buzzed 7 times with texts she didn't read. By the 8th buzz, she'd hailed a cab. Gangnam, she told the driver in a voice that didn't sound like hers. Anywhere with expensive whiskey. The club she found was underground in the way only Seoul's elite establishments could be. No sign, no line, just a red door beneath a shuttered restaurant and a bouncer who took one look at her ruined makeup and waved her through. Inside, bass pounded through marble floors slick with spilled champagne and cigarette smoke that smelled like money burning. Bodies moved in the dark like they were auditioning for oblivion. Alina claimed a corner booth and ordered Macallan 18 neat, then another. Then she stopped counting. The whiskey burned but didn't fill the emptiness. Around her, Seoul's beautiful people laughed too loud and touched each other with hands that promised things they'd forget by sunrise. She watched them with detached curiosity, wondering if any of them had come home tonight to find their entire life rewritten in the space between one breath and the next. You look like you're deciding whether to set something on fire or burn yourself instead. The voice came from her left, low, controlled, carrying the kind of authority that didn't ask permission. Alina turned her head and found a man standing beside her booth, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her car, midnight black Italian wool, no tie. Dark hair swept back from a face constructed from brutal angles and sharper edges, eyes that dissected her with surgical precision. "Who says I haven't already done both?" Alina heard herself say. His mouth almost smiled, almost. "Then you're in the right place." He slid into the booth without invitation, and something about the way he moved, smooth, deliberate, like violence wrapped in silk, made her pulse spike for reasons that had nothing to do with alcohol. The air shifted, got heavier, charged with electricity that tasted like bad decisions waiting to happen. "Kang Ji-hoon," he said, though it sounded less like introduction and more like statement of fact. "Should I know you?" "Most people do." He signaled the bartender with 2 fingers. Seconds later, crystal glasses appeared with amber liquid Alina recognized as whiskey older than she was. "You don't seem like most people." "Tonight I'm nobody." She grabbed the glass and drank deep, letting it scorch down her throat. "Just another woman stupid enough to trust the wrong person. Trust is the first mistake everyone makes." Ji-hoon's gaze stayed locked on hers, unblinking, reading things she didn't remember writing on her face. The second is thinking the pain will kill you. It won't. You'll wake up tomorrow still breathing. That's worse. Something about the way he said it, flat, certain, like he'd tested the theory personally, made Alina's chest tighten. She studied him properly for the first time. Mid-30s, probably. Expensive watch. Hands too controlled to belong to anyone who hadn't learned to hurt people efficiently. A scar traced his jawline, like someone had tried to cut his throat and failed. "You don't look like the philosophical type," she said. "I'm not." He finished his drink in one swallow. "I'm the type who fixes problems." "And what, you think I'm a problem you can fix?" "No." His eyes darkened. "I think you're angry enough to do something reckless. I'm offering to be the regret you choose instead of the one that chose you." The words landed like a match on gasoline. Alina knew she should leave. Walk out of this club, go home, cry into her pillow like a functional adult, and start rebuilding her life tomorrow morning with expensive therapy and better boundaries. That's what the sensible version of herself would do. Instead, she leaned forward until their faces were inches apart, close enough to smell whiskey and something darker underneath, smoke, leather, danger. "And if I say yes," her voice came out rough, "what happens then?" Jihoon's hand moved to her wrist, thumb pressing against her racing pulse. "Then you stop thinking for a few hours. Stop hurting. Stop being whoever the fuck you were before tonight. I don't even know you. Better that way." Her brain screamed warnings, red flags, stranger danger, every rational thought she'd ever had about self-preservation. But rationality was what got her here, playing by rules that guaranteed nothing except coming home early to find Minho fucking her best friend in the bed she'd picked out. Rationality had earned her betrayal wrapped in vanilla-scented sheets. So Alina grabbed Jihoon's expensive collar, pulled him close enough to taste the whiskey on his breath, and made the worst decision of her life. "Then stop talking and take me somewhere I can forget." They left through a back exit into rain that immediately soaked through her dress. Jihoon's car was waiting, a black Mercedes sedan with tinted windows dark enough to hide bodies. The driver didn't ask questions, just pulled into Seoul traffic while the city blurred past in streaks of neon and shadow. Alina didn't ask where they were going, didn't care. She focused on breathing, on the way Jihoon's hand rested on her thigh, with possession that should have scared her but didn't, on how badly she wanted to destroy the good girl version of herself who'd spent 2 years being faithful to a man who couldn't even cheat creatively. The penthouse overlooked Gangnam from 30 floors up, all floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture arranged like art installations. Rain hammered the glass in waves. Below them, Seoul glittered like broken stars. "Nice place for a stranger," Alina said, stepping inside. "I'm not a stranger anymore." Jihoon shrugged out of his jacket, loosening the collar of his shirt with efficient movements. "You're in my home. You know my name. That's more than most people get. Should I feel special?" "You should feel whatever stops you from thinking about him." The words cut through her anger like a blade, exposing the raw wound underneath. Alina's eyes burned. She refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of this man who looked at her like she was a puzzle worth solving. Instead, she crossed the distance between them and kissed him hard enough to taste blood. Jihoon didn't hesitate. His hands locked around her waist and yanked her flush against him, swallowing her gasp as the kiss turned brutal. Teeth and tongue and desperation. She clawed at his shirt buttons while he found the zipper of her dress, pulling it down with one smooth motion that left fabric pooling at her feet. "Last chance to change your mind," he said against her mouth, voice rough. "Shut up." They didn't make it to the bedroom. Alina found herself pressed against the cold window overlooking the city, Jihoon's mouth on her neck and his hands memorizing skin like he was cataloging weaknesses. Rain pounded the glass beside her face. Every touch erased Minho a little more. The way Jihoon kissed like he was claiming territory. The way his fingers dug into her hips with bruising pressure. The way he growled her name like it was the only word that mattered. She wanted it rough. Wanted to replace betrayal with something that felt real and immediate and utterly destructive. Jihoon gave her exactly that. No soft words, no gentle touches, just raw need translated into skin and sweat and gasping breaths that fogged the windows. When it was over, they collapsed onto the leather couch in a tangle of limbs and racing heartbeats. Alina stared at the ceiling, feeling hollow and full at the same time, her body singing with aftershocks while her brain tried to process what she'd just done. "I don't do this," she said into the silence. "Do what?" "Fuck strangers, make stupid decisions, any of this. Everyone does stupid things." Ji-hoon's hand traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "Most people just hide it better. You don't seem like the type who hides anything." "I hide everything." He said it like fact, not confession. "It's the only way to survive." Something about his tone made her turn her head to study his profile in the dark. Up close, exhaustion lived in the lines around his eyes. The scar on his jaw looked nastier, jagged, deep, the kind that came from someone who really meant to kill. Whoever Kang Ji-hoon was, he wasn't just some rich businessman with a penthouse and dangerous hobbies. "What do you do?" she asked. "Import, export, business consultation." The lie came smooth as silk. "Nothing interesting. You're a terrible liar. And you ask too many questions for someone who wanted to stop thinking." He was right. Alina closed her eyes and let the exhaustion pull her under, too drained to untangle the knot of emotions churning in her chest. Tomorrow she'd deal with consequences. Tonight, she'd sleep next to a stranger who'd given her exactly what she needed: oblivion. She woke alone to soul sunlight cutting through the windows like accusation. Alina sat up slowly, muscles aching in places that reminded her exactly what she'd done. The penthouse was empty. Ji-hoon's jacket still hung over the chair, but the man himself had vanished. A note rested on the coffee table in sharp handwriting. "Car will take you wherever you need to go." Okay, no phone number, no explanation. Nothing except confirmation that last night had been exactly what it looked like. A transaction between two people trying to forget their respective demons. Alina dressed in yesterday's ruined clothes, called the elevator, and rode down 30 floors into her regular life. The Mercedes was waiting outside. She gave the driver her office address and spent the ride staring out the window, watching Seoul rebuild itself into the Monday morning chaos of a city that didn't care about her personal apocalypse. Her phone had 43 unread messages. She deleted them all without reading. Work swallowed her for 2 weeks straight. Campaign launches, client meetings, presentations that required the version of herself who had her shit together. Alina performed the role flawlessly, smiling through conference calls while her personal life smoldered in ruins. Minho tried calling 17 times before giving up. Sarah sent one apologetic text. Alina blocked without responding. She threw herself into forgetting. It almost worked. Then Dae Minho showed up outside her office building on a Thursday afternoon, looking haggard and desperate in a wrinkled button-down that told her he'd been losing sleep. Alina kept walking toward the subway entrance, heels clicking against concrete, determined to ignore him into non-existence. "Alina, please." His hand caught her elbow. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." She jerked free. "You don't get to touch me." "I know. I fucked up. I know." He looked genuinely wrecked, dark circles, unwashed hair, the kind of misery that might have moved her 3 weeks ago. Now it just felt pathetic. "But I need you to understand it meant nothing. Sarah was drunk. I was stressed about work. It was one stupid mistake. In my bed. I know. With my candles still burning. Alina. While I was out buying your favorite imported beer because you mentioned wanting it that morning." She stepped closer, voice dropping to something cold and surgical. "So no, Minho. You don't get 5 minutes. You don't get explanations or closure or whatever the fuck you think you deserve. You get nothing." His face crumpled. "You can't just throw away 2 years. Watch me." She turned and walked away, surprised by how steady her legs felt, how clean the cut was. Maybe sleeping with a dangerous stranger had been exactly the closure she needed, proof that Minho wasn't special, that betrayal could be answered with better bad decisions. The subway ride home felt lighter. Alina allowed herself the small victory of feeling nothing when she thought about him. Maybe she was healing. Maybe Seoul's underground club scene did provide legitimate therapy between the whiskey and the terrible choices. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Family dinner tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Shilla Hotel, private room 12. Please come. I want to fix this. M." Alina stared at the message, thumb hovering over the delete button. Every rational bone in her body screamed to block the number, but curiosity itched under her skin. The same reckless instinct that led her into Ji-hoon's bed. She wanted to see Minho grovel in front of whatever family he'd dragged into this mess. Wanted to watch him squirm while explaining why his girlfriend wouldn't take him back. Petty? Absolutely. Satisfying? Potentially worth it. Fine. But this doesn't change anything. A. Friday arrived wrapped in autumn wind that smelled like roasted chestnuts and Seoul's eternal construction dust. Alina dressed carefully. Black sheath dress that said professional, red lipstick that said dangerous, heels sharp enough to draw blood. She arrived at the Shilla Hotel 10 minutes late on purpose, letting Minho marinate in anxiety. Private room 12 was elegant minimalism with a view of Namsan Tower glowing in the distance. A low table stretched across polished floors surrounded by silk cushions. Expensive ceramic dishes waited to be filled, and seated around the table were 4 people Alina recognized from the photos Minho kept in his wallet. His parents, stern-faced and wealthy, wearing judgment like designer accessories. His younger sister, 23 and bored, scrolling through her phone, and one empty cushion beside a man in a midnight black suit who made Alina's heart stop mid-beat. Kang Ji-hoon looked up from his whiskey glass, eyes locking onto hers with recognition that detonated like a grenade between them. For one endless second, the entire universe held its breath. Then Minho stood up, oblivious, gesturing toward the stranger who'd fucked Alina against a window 2 weeks ago. Alina, this is my uncle, Uncle Ji-hoon. This is Alina Reyes, the woman I told you about. The room tilted sideways. Sound compressed into a single high-pitched whine. Alina's brain short-circuited trying to process the impossible geometry of this situation. That the dangerous stranger who'd given her the best and worst night of her life was sitting across from Minho's parents, wearing the polite mask of family obligation. Ji-hoon's expression revealed nothing. He stood slowly, extended one hand, and said in that same controlled voice she remembered from the club, "Pleasure to meet you." His palm pressed against hers, and electricity shot up her arm like she'd grabbed a live wire. Neither of them let go fast enough. The handshake lasted 2 seconds too long, long enough for Minho's mother to notice, her sharp eyes narrowing with the particular suspicion wealthy women cultivated like weapons. "Please, sit." Minho pulled out a cushion for her, completely missing the way Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. "Uncle Ji-hoon doesn't usually make family dinners, so this is kind of special." "Special," Alina repeated, lowering herself onto the cushion with mechanical precision while her pulse jackhammered against her ribs. Across the table, Ji-hoon settled back into his seat, whiskey glass cradled in dangerous hands. How wonderful. Dinner began with polite small talk that felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. Minho's mother asked invasive questions about Alina's family background with surgical precision, clearly calculating her net worth and social value. His father grunted non-committal responses between bites of grilled beef. The sister ignored everyone in favor of her phone. And Ji-hoon watched Alina with the intensity of someone memorizing escape routes. She could barely taste the food. Every nerve ending screamed awareness of the man sitting 4 feet away. The man whose hands had mapped her body, whose mouth had swallowed her moans, whose bed she'd woken up in with regret and satisfaction tangled together like wreckage. Now, he was Minho's uncle. Family. The walking embodiment of every bad decision she'd made compounded into fresh nightmare. "So," Minho's mother said, her smile sharp as broken glass, "my son tells me there was some misunderstanding between you two." "Misunderstanding?" Alina set down her chopsticks with controlled precision. "Interesting word for fucking my best friend in my apartment." Shocked silence slammed into the room. Minho choked on his water. His mother's expression frosted over. Even the sister looked up from her phone. Ji-hoon's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I see." Mrs. Kang's voice could have flash-frozen hell. "Perhaps we should discuss this more delicately." "Why?" Alina felt rage building in her chest, hot and clean. 2 weeks of swallowed anger suddenly finding oxygen. "Your son cheated. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a choice he made knowing exactly what it would destroy. So no, I won't discuss it delicately just because we're in a nice restaurant. Alina, please." Minho reached for her hand. She jerked away like he'd tried to grab live coals. "Don't touch me." "Everyone makes mistakes," his father said gruffly. "No need to throw away a good relationship over one incident." One incident I walked in on, Alina cut in. Who knows how many others I missed while working 70 hours a week to afford the lifestyle he enjoyed. But sure, let's call it a mistake. Let's minimize it. Let's sit here pretending infidelity is just boys being boys. The temperature in the room plummeted. Mrs. Kang looked like she'd swallowed glass. Mr. Kang's face darkened. Minho stared at his plate like he wanted the floor to swallow him. Only Ji-hoon looked satisfied. "She's right," he said quietly, but his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Every head turned toward him. "My nephew fucked up. Minimizing it doesn't change that. If anything, it makes him look weaker." "Ji-hoon," Mrs. Kang started. "No." He set down his glass with a soft click that somehow commanded more attention than shouting. "You asked her here to smooth things over, to make her forgive him because families like ours don't tolerate public humiliation. But maybe Minho should experience actual consequences instead of being protected from his own choices." The words detonated. Minho's mother turned crimson. His father looked ready to start throwing punches. Even the sister stopped scrolling, sensing blood in the water. Minho himself seemed to shrink 3 sizes, caught between rage and confusion as his legendary uncle, the one family member everyone feared, openly sided with the girlfriend he'd cheated on. "Uncle," Minho said carefully, "you don't understand, Sheo." "I understand perfectly." Ji-hoon's gaze slid to Alina, and heat flashed between them like lightning. "Your girlfriend deserves better than apologies from people who think she should accept less." Their eyes locked. The air turned electric. Somewhere in the subtext of that stare lived every secret they couldn't speak. The club, the penthouse, the night that rewrote both their lives in ways neither had anticipated. Alina's breath caught. Her pulse thundered. Across the table, Ji-hoon's expression remained perfectly controlled, but she saw it now. The crack in his armor, the barely leashed intensity that said he remembered exactly how she tasted. "This dinner is over," Mrs. Kang announced, standing abruptly. "Alina, I think it's best if you leave." "Gladly." She rose smoothly, grabbing her purse, met Ji-hoon's eyes one more time, searching for what? Acknowledgement? Warning? Answers to questions she didn't know how to ask? He gave her nothing except the faintest nod. Alina walked out of private room 12 with her spine straight and her heart threatening to crack through her ribs. She made it to the hotel lobby before her hands started shaking, made it outside before the panic hit. She leaned against the stone wall, sucking in cold night air, trying to process the impossible clusterfuck her life had become. Minho's uncle. The man who'd given her the best sex of her life was Minho's actual uncle. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Meet me. Han River, Banpo Bridge. 11 p.m. We need to talk. K." Alina stared at the message, every self-preservation instinct screaming at her to delete it, block the number, and spend the next decade avoiding anyone named Kang. This was insanity. This was disaster. This was... She typed back, "I'll be there." Exactly what she'd do anyway, because apparently she'd learned nothing except how to make bad decisions with prettier packaging. Banpo Bridge stretched across the Han River like a steel spine, connecting 2 halves of Seoul that refused to touch. At 11 p.m., the tourist crowds had thinned to scattered couples and late-night joggers. Rainbow fountains sprayed synchronized arcs into darkness, while city lights reflected off black water in fractured patterns. Alina stood near the railing, watching the river flow and wondering if she'd finally achieved clinical insanity. Meeting Kang Ji-hoon, her one-night stand, the crime boss she'd accidentally fucked, her ex-boyfriend's uncle, was objectively the worst decision in a month full of catastrophic choices. Every rational cell in her brain screamed at her to leave, to get back on the subway, go home, block his number, and pretend that dinner never happened. Instead, she waited. Footsteps approached from behind, measured and controlled. She didn't turn around, didn't need to. Her body recognized him before her brain caught up, the shift in air pressure, the way her pulse spiked, the electric charge that crawled across her skin like static before a storm. "You came," Ji-hoon said, stopping beside her at the railing. He'd lost the suit jacket, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The scar on his jaw looked rawer in the artificial light. "Clearly I have a death wish." Alina kept her eyes on the water. If she looked at him directly, she'd either hit him or kiss him, and neither seemed productive. Or maybe I just wanted to hear how you plan to explain this nightmare. I can't. Try harder. Ji-hoon was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried exhaustion that went bone deep. 2 weeks ago, you were a stranger in a club who looked like she wanted to set the world on fire. I didn't ask questions. You didn't offer details. That was the arrangement. And when did you figure out who I was? The second Minho said your name at dinner. He turned to face her profile, forcing her to feel the weight of his stare. Before that, you were just the woman I couldn't stop thinking about for 14 days straight. After, you became the complication I should have walked away from. Should have. Alina finally met his eyes, anger flaring hot in her chest. But here you are. Here I am. The admission hung between them like confession. Around them, the bridge hummed with late-night soul, distant traffic, the river's steady flow, fountains spraying their choreographed display. Everything kept moving while Alina's world fractured into impossible geometry. Your nephew thinks we just met tonight, she said slowly. Your family thinks I'm the scorned girlfriend trying to embarrass them, and you... She stepped closer, close enough to smell whiskey and smoke on his breath. You sat there defending me like I was worth protecting. Why? Because you were right. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. And because watching you eviscerate my sister-in-law's pretentious bullshit was the most honest thing I've seen in years. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Alina laughed, sharp and bitter. This is insane. You know that, right? Your nephew is my ex-boyfriend. I slept with you to forget him. Now you're... what? Planning to do this again? Sneak around behind his back? Pretend that night never happened? I don't know what I'm planning. For the first time, Ji-hoon's control cracked enough to show something raw underneath. All I know is you walked into that dinner looking like revenge in a black dress, and every instinct I've spent 30 years honing told me to stay the fuck away. But I'm still here. So either I'm losing my edge or you're the worst decision I've ever made, and I've made plenty. The words should have scared her, should have sent her running back to her apartment to drink wine and question every life choice that led to this moment. Instead, Alina felt heat coil low in her stomach, the same reckless hunger that drove her into his bed 2 weeks ago. We can't do this, she said, even as her body moved closer. I know. It's wrong, complicated, fucking nuclear-level disaster waiting to happen. I know that too. Then why aren't you leaving? Ji-hoon's hand came up to cup her jaw, thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating precision. Same reason you're still standing here. The kiss detonated between them like gasoline meeting flame. Alina's hands fisted in his shirt, dragging him closer as his mouth claimed hers with brutal intensity. No gentleness, no pretense, just raw need translated into teeth and tongue and gasping breaths that fogged the cold night air. She tasted whiskey and anger, and something darker, the particular flavor of knowing this was wrong and doing it anyway. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Ji-hoon pressed his forehead against hers. This stays between us, he said quietly. No one finds out. Not Minho. Not my family. No one. You mean we sneak around like teenagers? I mean we survive this without burning down everything I've built. Alina pulled back enough to search his face. In the fountain lights, he looked older, lines carved deep around his eyes, exhaustion living in the set of his shoulders. Whatever Kang Ji-hoon had built, it weighed on him like architecture made of bones. What exactly have you built? She asked. Minho says you do import-export, but you don't strike me as the shipping container type. His expression shuddered completely. You don't want to know. Maybe I do. No. Ji-hoon stepped back, creating distance that felt like walls slamming into place. You want the version of me that fucked you in my penthouse and didn't ask complicated questions. That's what keeps this simple. The second you start digging into who I actually am, this becomes something neither of us can walk away from. The warning landed cold and clear. Alina should have listened, should have taken the out he was offering and disappeared back into her regular life, where the worst complication was changing her passwords after breaking up with a cheating boyfriend. Instead, she said, "What if I don't want simple?" Ji-hoon stared at her for a long moment, something dangerous flickering behind his eyes. Then he pulled out his phone and typed quickly before showing her the screen. A calendar invite, coffee, tomorrow, 1 p.m. Hongdae. 1 hour, he said. You show up, we talk. You don't show up, we pretend Bampo Bridge never happened. Your choice. He walked away before she could respond, disappearing into Seoul's nighttime chaos like smoke dissolving into darkness. Alina stood alone at the railing, staring at the calendar invite burning on her own phone screen, knowing she'd already made her choice. She was going to show up. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Alina sat through morning meetings on autopilot, nodding at presentations she didn't hear while her brain replayed Ji-hoon's warning on loop. You don't want to know who I actually am. The words carried weight that suggested answers she shouldn't want. Import-export was a lie. That much was obvious. Men who did legitimate business didn't have scars like his or eyes that promised violence as naturally as breathing. But curiosity was a drug, and Alina had apparently developed a taste for terrible decisions. At 12:30, she left the office claiming a dentist appointment her assistant didn't question. The subway to Hongdae was packed with university students and tourists hunting street food. She emerged into afternoon chaos, cafes blasting K-pop, vintage clothing shops, buskers fighting for sidewalk territory. The coffee shop Ji-hoon specified was tucked down a side alley, small and anonymous, the kind of place designed for conversations people didn't want overheard. He was already there, occupying a corner table with his back to the wall, dressed down in black jeans and a leather jacket that somehow made him look more dangerous instead of less. He watched her approach with unreadable eyes. You came, he said as she slid into the opposite chair. Apparently I'm committed to making historically bad choices. Alina ordered an Americano from the disinterested barista. So, you promised we'd talk. I promised 1 hour. Then start talking. Ji-hoon was quiet for a moment, fingers drumming against his coffee cup, and the only visible tell that he was deciding something important. Finally, he leaned forward. What do you know about Seoul's organized crime structure? The question landed like a punch. Alina felt her stomach drop. Excuse me? Simple question. What do you know? She struggled to pivot her brain from expecting romantic confession to whatever the fuck this was. Not much. Yakuza spillover from Japan, Chinese triads, some local gangs. Why are you asking me about... The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Oh. Yeah. Ji-hoon's expression remained carefully neutral. Oh. You're... Alina couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't make her mouth form words around the magnitude of what he was implying. Import-export is a convenient cover. The actual business involves territory control, protection services, money laundering, and occasionally removing obstacles that can't be negotiated with. He said it like he was describing his commute, flat, matter-of-fact. I run the second largest operation in Seoul, which means I have enemies, debts, and a body count. I stopped tracking around 30. The confession should have sent her running, should have made her grab her purse and sprint for the exit while calling every authority figure she could think of. Instead, Alina sat frozen, watching this man, this stranger she'd fucked, this crime boss wearing leather and exhaustion, calmly admit to being everything her mother warned her about. You're telling me this why? She managed. Because you asked. And because if we're doing this, he gestured between them. You need to understand what you're walking into. I'm not some complicated businessman with a dark side. I'm a criminal. I hurt people for a living. And getting involved with me means painting a target on your back the size of fucking Namsan Tower. Jesus Christ. Alina drained her coffee in one burning gulp, needing something to do with her hands besides shake. And you thought this was, what? A good first date confession? Hi, I'm a crime lord. Want to grab dinner? This isn't a date. Then what is it? A warning. Ji-hoon's eyes locked onto hers with intensity that felt physical. Walk away, Alina. Forget Bampo Bridge. Forget my name. Find some boring corporate asshole who cheats at golf instead of territory disputes. Live a normal life where the worst thing you deal with is Minho's pathetic attempts to get you back. But you don't want me to walk away, she said slowly, reading the subtext beneath his words. That's why you're telling me this. You're hoping I'll run so you don't have to be the one who ends it. His jaw tightened. I'm hoping you're smarter than I am. Clearly I'm not. Alina leaned back, studying him with new eyes. The scar. The controlled violence in how he moved, the weight he carried like armor. Because I'm still sitting here. You're an idiot. Probably, but at least I'm an honest one. She signaled for another coffee, buying time to organize the chaos in her head. So what happens now? I know your secret. You know I'm connected to your nephew. We've already crossed approximately 17 ethical lines. Where does that leave us? Nowhere good. Specifically, Jihoon was quiet long enough that Alina thought he wouldn't answer. Then, it leaves us sneaking around like criminals, which is ironic, since only one of us actually is one. It means I show up at your office with coffee and we pretend it's coincidence. It means late-night drives where we don't go home. It means lying to everyone, including ourselves, about what this is. And what is this? Temporary insanity. But the way he said it, rough, honest, stripped of pretense, made it sound like confession instead of diagnosis. Alina's phone buzzed, a text from Minho. Can we talk? I miss you. She showed Jihoon the screen. Your nephew won't let go. He's stubborn, family trait. His expression darkened. Block his number. You don't get to tell me what to do. I'm not telling you. I'm suggesting that making this complicated enough to survive doesn't include entertaining his delusional hope. This is already complicated enough to implode. Alina deleted the message anyway. Not because Jihoon suggested it, but because seeing Minho's name made her stomach turn. Your family thinks I'm garbage. Your nephew cheated on me in my own bed. And you just admitted to running a criminal empire. So forgive me if I'm unclear on how we're supposed to navigate this nightmare. Carefully. Jihoon reached across the table, fingers brushing hers. The touch sent electricity shooting up her arm. We see each other when it's safe. We don't talk about my work. You don't ask questions I can't answer without making you an accessory. And we don't, under any circumstances, let my family discover this. What happens if they do? His expression went cold. Nothing you want to imagine. The threat hung between them, unspoken but clear. Whatever consequences came from this relationship being exposed, they involved violence Alina couldn't conceptualize. She should have been terrified, should have been making excuses and backing toward the exit. Instead, she laced her fingers through his. One condition, she said. You don't lie to me. I can handle dangerous. I can handle complicated. I can't handle being treated like I'm too fragile for the truth. Jihoon studied her face like he was memorizing a map. Deal. They left the cafe through separate exits, playing at discretion neither of them believed in. Over the following 2 weeks, their affair became routine. Stolen hours wedged between Alina's marketing campaigns and Jihoon's unspecified business. He'd appear outside her office at odd times, always with coffee exactly how she liked it, always with an excuse about being in the neighborhood. They'd drive along the Han River at midnight, windows down, talking about everything except the elephant in the car, shaped like organized crime and family betrayal. Alina learned to read him in increments. The way tension lived in his shoulders after particularly violent days. How he touched her like she might disappear if he wasn't careful. The scars he collected like other men collected watches, each one a story he wouldn't tell. She learned that Kang Jihoon was exhausted by the weight of his own empire. That he'd inherited the business from his father at 23 and spent 12 years building it into something that terrified competitors and enslaved him. That he wanted out but couldn't see the exit without burning everything down. Why do it then? She asked one night while they sat on his penthouse balcony, soul glittering below like broken stars. If you hate it so much, walk away. And go where? Jihoon's laugh was bitter. I've been doing this since I was old enough to hold a gun. It's the only thing I know, the only thing I'm good at. That's not true, isn't it? He turned to face her, and in the city lights his expression looked hollowed out. Name one legitimate skill I have that doesn't involve hurting people or cleaning up messes with violence. You make me feel safe. The words came out before Alina could stop them. In the middle of this insane situation that should terrify me, you make me feel like I'm standing on solid ground. That's a skill. Something shifted in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. He pulled her close, kissing her with unexpected gentleness that made her chest ache. They ended up tangled in his sheets again, but slower this time. Less desperate, like they were memorizing each other instead of trying to forget. Afterwards, while Alina traced the scar across his ribs, Jihoon said quietly, My nephew keeps asking about you. Her hand stilled. What's he saying? That you blocked his number, that you won't return his calls, that he fucked up the best thing in his life and can't figure out how to fix it. Jihoon's voice carried zero sympathy. I told him some things can't be fixed, that maybe he should learn to live with consequences. And what did he say? That I don't understand how he feels. Dark humor flickered across Jihoon's face. The irony would be hilarious if it wasn't so goddamn dangerous. Do you feel guilty? Alina asked. About this? About him? No. The answer came immediate and certain. Minho made his choices. I'm making mine. The fact that they intersect is inconvenient, not immoral. Your family wouldn't agree. My family doesn't get a vote. But 3 days later, the vote came anyway, delivered via Minho showing up at Alina's office unannounced, looking haggard and desperate in a way that suggested he'd been rehearsing this confrontation for weeks. Alina's assistant tried to intercept him. Sir, you can't just... 5 minutes. Minho pushed past her into Alina's private office, closing the door behind him. That's all I need. 5 minutes, and I'll leave. Alina looked up from her laptop, irritation spiking cold. You need to leave now. I'm sorry. He said it like the words cost him everything. I know it's not enough. I know it doesn't fix what I did. But I need you to hear it. I'm sorry for hurting you, for betraying you, for being the kind of coward who destroyed something good because I was too stupid to appreciate what I had. Great. Apology received. Now leave. Alina. No. She stood, planting both hands on her desk. You don't get to do this. You don't get to show up at my workplace and ambush me with performative remorse. I've moved on. You should too. Have you, though? Minho's eyes narrowed, searching her face like he was decoding a puzzle. Because my uncle seems awfully interested in your well-being, shows up at family dinners defending you, asks about you constantly, almost like he... Finish that sentence and you'll regret it. The threat came from the doorway. Both Alina and Minho spun to find Jihoon standing there, dressed in dark business wear, expression carved from ice. He must have been downstairs. Must have seen Minho enter. Must have followed him up, because apparently discretion had limits. Uncle? Minho's confusion was almost comical. What are you... Leave. Jihoon stepped fully into the office, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Alina asked you to go. I'm not asking. This is between me and her. Nothing involving her is just between you anymore. Jihoon moved closer, predatory and controlled. You lost that privilege when you fucked her friend in her bed. So either walk out on your own or I'll assist. Your choice. Menace saturated every word. Alina watched Minho process the threat, watched realization dawn slowly across his face, the pieces clicking together in real time. His uncle's sudden interest, the way Jihoon watched Alina at dinner, the territorial aggression crackling between them right now. Holy shit, Minho breathed. You're fucking her. The accusation detonated. Silence slammed into the room like a physical force. Alina's heart stopped. Jihoon's expression revealed nothing, but his hands flexed at his sides, the only tell that violence was seconds away from erupting. Get out, Jihoon said quietly. You're actually... Minho looked between them, horror and fury warring across his face. My uncle! My fucking uncle is sleeping with my girlfriend! Ex-girlfriend, Alina cut in, finding her voice. A title you earned by being unfaithful. What I do now isn't your business. But with him? Minho's voice cracked. With my own family? How long has this been? His eyes widened. The dinner. You already knew each other at the dinner. That's why he defended you. That's why... Oh my God, you were fucking him while we were still together. We weren't together, Alina said coldly. We were done the second I walked in on you and Sarah. This is insane. What's insane is you thinking you have any right to judge me. She moved around the desk, anger overriding self-preservation. You destroyed what we had. I moved on. If that bothers you, maybe try being faithful next time. I'm going to tell my mother, Minho said, voice shaking with rage. I'm going to tell the entire family what you're doing. Jihoon grabbed Minho's collar and slammed him against the office wall, hard enough to rattle the framed diplomas. The violence happened so fast, Alina barely registered it. 1 second they were talking, the next Jihoon had his nephew pinned like an insect, forearm pressed against his throat. Listen carefully, Jihoon said. voice dropping to something lethal. You're going to walk out of this office. You're going to go home. And you're going to keep your fucking mouth shut about what you think you saw here. Because if one word of this reaches my mother or anyone else in our family, I will make you regret every decision that led to this moment. Understood? Minho choked against the pressure on his windpipe, nodding frantically. Ji-hoon released him with a shove. Now get out! Minho stumbled toward the door, shooting Alina one last look full of betrayal and fury before disappearing into the hallway. The door clicked shut. Silence rushed in to fill the space. Well, Alina said into the quiet, I think we just hit the point of no return. Ji-hoon turned to face her, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked genuinely rattled. He's going to tell my mother. You threatened him. Well, threats don't work on people who feel betrayed enough to burn everything down. He ran both hands through his hair, the control he wore like armor finally cracking. Minho's always been vindictive when he's hurt. He'll go straight to her, and once my mother knows, what happens? Ji-hoon met her eyes. Nothing you want to experience. Alina's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You think you won? You took everything from me. Now I'll take everything from you. M. She showed Ji-hoon the screen. He read it once, jaw tightening, then pulled out his own phone and made a call. Hyun-woo, I need a team on Alina Reyes, 24-hour coverage starting immediately. Anyone approaches her who isn't vetted, you stop them. I don't care how you do it. He listened for a moment. Because someone just declared war, and she's the target. He hung up, and the weight of what just happened crashed over Alina like ice water. This wasn't a dramatic relationship anymore. This was survival. This was consequences catching up with terrible decisions at terminal velocity. What did we just do? She whispered. Ji-hoon crossed the distance between them and cupped her face in both hands, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. We just chose each other, he said quietly. And now we deal with everything that comes after. Outside Alina's office windows, Seoul gleamed in afternoon sunlight, oblivious to the fact that somewhere in its glittering chaos, Dae Minho was already making phone calls that would detonate both their lives. The war was coming. They'd fired the first shot without meaning to, and there was no taking it back. Quote, that night, Alina couldn't sleep. She lay in her apartment staring at the ceiling while her phone buzzed with texts from unknown numbers, some threatening, some warning, all confirming that Minho had followed through on his promise. Word was spreading through the Kang family network like wildfire. At 2 a.m., her intercom buzzed. She checked the video screen and found Ji-hoon standing outside her building, looking exhausted in the security camera's grainy feed. She buzzed him up without thinking. He walked into her apartment like a man carrying the weight of imminent collapse, moved straight to her couch, and sat down with his head in his hands. Alina had never seen him look this wrecked. Not after violence, not after business disasters, not even during their most honest conversations. It's done, he said without looking up. My mother knows. My father knows. Half of Seoul's underworld probably knows by now. And my mother has demanded a family meeting tomorrow night. All of us, including you. He finally raised his head and his eyes looked hollowed out. She's going to try to end this, whatever it takes. Define whatever it takes. Threats, blackmail, possibly violence. Ji-hoon's voice was flat. My mother doesn't lose, and right now she views you as someone who corrupted her youngest son, manipulated her brother-in-law, and brought scandal to the family name. She'll do whatever's necessary to remove you from the equation. Fear spiked through Alina's chest. So what do? We survive. Ji-hoon stood, crossed to where she stood frozen by the kitchen counter, and pulled her into his arms. Tomorrow night, you walk into that meeting and you don't back down. You don't apologize. You don't give her an inch, because the second you show weakness, she'll destroy you. And you'll be there? I'll be there. He kissed her forehead, then her mouth, tasting like exhaustion and determination. No matter what happens, I'm not walking away. Even if it costs you everything, even then. They stood there in her darkened apartment, holding each other while Seoul slept outside, and tomorrow's battle approached like a freight train neither of them could stop. Somewhere across the city, the Kong family was sharpening knives. Minho was plotting revenge. And Alina Reyes, former good girl, marketing executive, woman who 6 weeks ago had the most boring, predictable life, was about to walk into a war zone armed with nothing except the terrifying knowledge that she'd fallen for the most dangerous man in Seoul. And she wasn't planning to give him up. Not to his family. Not to common sense. Not to anyone. The point of no return wasn't just approaching. They'd already crossed it the night she first walked into that club and met a stranger wearing violence like cologne. Everything that came after was just consequences catching up. The Kong family compound sat in Seongbuk-dong like a fortress disguised as wealth. Traditional Hanok architecture wrapped around modern security systems, high walls topped with cameras, guards stationed at intervals that suggested this wasn't just about keeping reporters out. Alina arrived at 7 p.m. sharp in the back of Ji-hoon's Mercedes, wearing armor disguised as a navy dress and heels sharp enough to draw blood. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Ji-hoon reached over and laced his fingers through hers, squeezing once. "Remember what I said. Don't apologize. Don't back down. Easy for you to say. They're your family." "Exactly." His jaw tightened. "Which means I know what they're capable of." The car stopped. Guards opened the door. Alina stepped out into twilight that smelled like pine and money, following Ji-hoon through gates that closed behind them with the finality of prison doors. They walked through immaculate gardens toward the main house, where warm light spilled from windows that somehow looked cold. Inside, the Kang family waited like a jury assembled for execution. Mrs. Kong sat at the head of a low table in the formal receiving room, wearing traditional hanbok and an expression carved from ice. Mr. Kang flanked her right side, arms crossed, face unreadable. Minho occupied the far corner, refusing to meet anyone's eyes, but radiating vindictive satisfaction. The sister scrolled through her phone with practiced disinterest, and scattered around the perimeter were 3 men Alina didn't recognize. Older, harder, wearing suits that couldn't hide the violence underneath. Family elders, the ones who made decisions that stuck. "Sit," Mrs. Kong said, gesturing to cushions across from her. Ji-hoon sat first, pulling Alina down beside him with possessive certainty. The arrangement spoke volumes, him placing himself between her and his family, a physical barrier that said he'd chosen sides already. Mrs. Kang's eyes narrowed. "You bring her into our home, after what she's done." "After what I've done," Ji-hoon corrected quietly. "Alina didn't corrupt me, Mother. I made my own choices. Choices that humiliate this family." Her voice could have flash-frozen blood. "You, my brother-in-law, a man of your position, sleeping with my son's ex-girlfriend, a woman who clearly manipulated her way into your bed to punish Minho for his indiscretion." "That's not what happened," Alina said, finding her voice. "Then explain." Mrs. Kang's attention swiveled to her like a spotlight designed to expose lies. "Explain how a simple marketing executive ends up in Ji-hoon's penthouse. How you managed to seduce a man who's rejected advances from women far more accomplished. What exactly your endgame is." The accusation landed like a slap. Alina felt rage building in her chest, hot, clean, clarifying. She'd spent weeks letting other people define her narrative. First Minho, claiming his infidelity was a mistake she should forgive. Now his mother, painting her as some calculating seductress instead of a woman who'd made one reckless decision that spiraled into consequence. "I met your brother-in-law in a club," Alina said, voice steady despite her racing pulse. "I just walked in on Minho fucking my best friend in my bed. I was drunk, angry, and looking to forget. Ji-hoon offered exactly that. We spent one night together. That's it. No manipulation, no endgame, just 2 people trying to outrun their respective demons. And then Minho invited me to family dinner, and I discovered the stranger I'd slept with was his uncle. Which should have ended everything, but it didn't, because apparently we're both idiots who can't walk away from terrible decisions." Minho made a strangled sound from his corner. "You're acting like I'm the villain here." "You're the villain," Alina cut in, turning to face him directly. "You cheated. You lied. You destroyed what we had because you were too weak to keep your dick in your pants. Everything that came after, me and Ji-hoon, that's downstream from your choices. So don't sit there playing victim when you lit the match." "Enough." Mr. Kong spoke for the first time, voice like gravel. This family does not air grievances like common criminals. He shot Jihoon a look heavy with meaning. Though I suppose that ship has sailed. Jihoon's expression went carefully blank. Father, you've brought scandal to this house, endangered business relationships, made enemies who smell weakness. Mr. Kong leaned forward, and Alina suddenly understood where Jihoon learned to project menace. All for what? A woman you barely know? One who'll be gone in 6 months when the novelty wears off? She's not going anywhere. Jihoon's voice dropped to something lethal. And if you think I'm ending this because it's inconvenient, you don't know me as well as you think. One of the elders, gray-haired, wearing wireframe glasses, cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss the actual problem. Not the relationship itself, but what it represents. Kang Jihoon is the face of this family's business interests. His reputation directly impacts our negotiations with partners in Tokyo, Shanghai, Hong Kong. A scandal like this, affair with nephew's ex-girlfriend, it makes us look undisciplined, weak, like we can't control our own house. So this is about appearances, Alina said slowly. This is about survival. Mrs. Kang's eyes glittered with cold calculation. In our world, reputation is currency. Jihoon has spent 12 years building an empire based on fear and respect. You threaten both. Therefore, you cannot be allowed to continue. Allowed? Alina repeated the word like she was tasting poison. You're talking about me like I'm a problem to solve instead of a person. You are a problem. Mrs. Kang said it with absolute certainty. One that will be resolved tonight. Either you walk away voluntarily, or we make it impossible for you to stay. Jihoon stood abruptly, rage rolling off him in waves. You don't threaten her. Sit down. Mr. Kang's command carried the weight of decades. You've forgotten your place. My place? Jihoon laughed, sharp and bitter. My place is running the business you're all too comfortable to get your hands dirty with. My place is being the monster this family needs when negotiations fail and violence becomes necessary. Don't lecture me about place when I'm the reason everyone in this room sleeps safely at night. The room went silent. Even Mrs. Kang looked momentarily shaken by the raw fury in her brother-in-law's voice. But she recovered quickly, smoothing her hanbok with precise movements. Then perhaps it's time we discussed alternative arrangements. If you cannot separate personal indulgence from professional responsibility, perhaps someone else should assume leadership. Someone more disciplined. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Alina watched Jihoon process it. The decades of work, the empire he'd built, the blood he'd spilled, all of it dangled over a cliff because he refused to walk away from her. You can't remove me, he said quietly. Can't we? The elder with glasses smiled, cold and precise. The council has been discussing succession plans. You're 35, unmarried, no heirs. Your recent behavior suggests emotional instability. Perhaps early retirement would benefit everyone. By council, you mean you've already decided. Jihoon's hands flexed at his sides. This meeting was never about Alina. It's a coup dressed up as family intervention. Call it what you want. Mr. Kang stood, drawing himself to full height. But the decision stands. Either you end this relationship immediately and marry someone appropriate, someone who strengthens our alliances instead of weakening them, or you step down. Those are your options. Alina felt the bottom drop out of her stomach. She'd walked into this meeting expecting threats, manipulation, maybe financial pressure. Not this. Not Jihoon being forced to choose between the empire he'd sacrificed everything to build and a woman he'd known for 6 weeks. Don't, she said quietly, grabbing his wrist. Don't throw away everything because of me. Jihoon looked down at her, and something in his expression made her chest tighten. You think that's what this is? Me choosing you over my empire? Isn't it? No. He turned back to his family, and when he spoke, his voice carried absolute certainty. This is me choosing myself over the cage you've kept me in for 12 years. I'm done. Done playing the monster. Done sacrificing everything for a family that views me as a tool instead of a person. Done pretending I don't want something more than blood and violence. You're making a mistake, Mrs. Kang said, standing now. Walk away from us, and you'll have nothing. No resources, no protection. Every enemy you've made over the years will come for you the second they learn you're vulnerable. Let them come. The words detonated. Mr. Kang's face went purple. The elders exchanged rapid glances. Even Minho looked shocked, like he'd expected his uncle to cave under pressure instead of burning everything down. Mrs. Kang's expression shifted, surprise giving way to something colder, more calculated. You think you can just walk away? After everything you know? Everything you've done for this family? Try to stop me. We won't have to. She smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Alina had ever seen. You'll come crawling back. Because that girl you're so desperate to protect? She has no idea what you really are. What you've done. The bodies you've buried. The lines you've crossed. Give it time. Let her see the monster underneath the expensive suits. She'll run eventually. They always do. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, just grabbed Alina's hand and pulled her toward the door. They made it 3 steps before Minho's voice rang out. She already knows about the Busan warehouse. Everyone froze. The temperature in the room plummeted. Alina felt Ji-hoon's hand turn to stone in hers, his entire body going rigid. She looked at Minho, who was staring at his uncle with vindictive triumph written across his face. What did you say? Ji-hoon's voice had dropped to something subterranean. The Busan warehouse, 3 years ago, the incident that nobody talks about. Minho stood, crossing his arms. I did some digging after I found out about you two. Made some calls, talked to people who remember what really happened that night. And I'm wondering, does Alina know? Does she know what you're capable of when someone crosses you? Alina's stomach twisted. She looked at Ji-hoon, searching his face for denial, for confusion, for anything except the guilty confirmation she saw there instead. Ji-hoon? Her voice came out small. What's he talking about? Minho, don't... Ji-hoon started. Tell her. Minho's smile turned cruel. Tell her about the container. About the 15 people locked inside. About how you left them there for 3 days because their boss tried to cheat you on a shipment. Tell her how they begged. How some of them were barely adults. Tell her what you did when the begging stopped. The room spun. Alina felt bile rising in her throat, but she couldn't look away from Ji-hoon's face, from the way he'd gone pale, from the muscle jumping in his jaw, from the absolute horror in his eyes that confirmed everything Minho was saying was true. They were traffickers, Ji-hoon said hoarsely. Human cargo, selling people like livestock. I didn't just lock them up. You left them to die, Minho finished. 15 people suffocated in a shipping container because you wanted to send a message. That's who you are, Uncle. That's the man she's defending. The monster who kills people for making business mistakes. Alina stepped back, hand slipping from Ji-hoon's. Her brain couldn't process it, couldn't reconcile the man who touched her like she was precious with someone capable of mass murder. She'd known he was dangerous, known he hurt people. But this was something else entirely. Alina. Ji-hoon reached for her. She flinched. The movement was instinctive, involuntary, but it landed like a bullet. Ji-hoon's face crumpled, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked utterly destroyed. It's not... He struggled for words. They weren't innocent. They were monsters, selling children. I did what nobody else would. By becoming something worse. The words came out of Alina before she could stop them. You murdered 15 people. You're standing here telling me it was justified because they were bad people. Like that makes it okay. Like you're some kind of... She couldn't finish. Couldn't breathe. The room was too small, the air too thick. She'd fallen for a man who killed people and justified it with moral calculus that made her stomach turn. Mrs. Kong watched the devastation play out with satisfied coldness. Now she sees. This is who you are, Ji-hoon. This is what drives everyone away eventually. Not us. You. Ji-hoon stood frozen, watching Alina back toward the door like she'd just realized she was standing next to a bomb. Don't, he said quietly. Don't do this. Let me explain. Explain what? Alina's voice cracked. That you're a mass murderer? That everything you told me about wanting out, about being exhausted by the violence, was bullshit? What's left to explain? That I'm trying to be better. That you make me want to be someone who doesn't have to do those things anymore. But you did them. Tears burned her eyes. She refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these people who'd orchestrated this entire nightmare. You locked 15 people in a container and left them to die. That's not something you get better from. That's who you are. She ran. down the hallway, through the gardens, past the guards who didn't stop her. She heard Ji-hoon calling her name but didn't turn around, just kept running until she hit the street, flagging down a taxi with shaking hands. "Drive," she told the confused driver. "Anywhere, just go." The taxi pulled into Seoul traffic, and Alina finally let herself break down, sobbing into her hands while the city blurred past in streaks of neon. She'd been so stupid, so goddamn blind, thinking she could handle dangerous, that she could separate the man from the monster, that love was enough to override 15 bodies rotting in a shipping container. Her phone buzzed. Ji-hoon calling. She declined. It rang again. Again. 23 times before it finally stopped. Then texts started flooding in. "Please, let me explain. It's not what you think. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just 5 minutes. Alina, please." She blocked his number. Blocked Minho's. Blocked every Kang family contact she had. Then she turned off her phone completely and stared out the window, watching Seoul scroll past, wondering how she'd managed to detonate her entire life in 6 weeks. The taxi eventually stopped outside her apartment building. Alina paid with cash she didn't remember having, stumbled inside, and made it to her couch before collapsing. She sat in darkness for hours, replaying every conversation, every touch, every moment she'd convinced herself that Kang Ji-hoon was more than the violence he carried. Around 3 a.m., someone knocked on her door. Alina froze. The knock came again, soft, insistent. She checked the peephole and found not Ji-hoon, but a woman she didn't recognize. Mid-40s, elegant business suit, carrying a briefcase that looked expensive. "Ms. Reyes?" The woman's voice came muffled through the door. "My name is Park Soo-young. I'm an attorney. I need to speak with you about Kang Ji-hoon. It's urgent." Every instinct screamed not to open the door, but exhaustion and curiosity won. Alina unlocked the deadbolt, keeping the chain engaged. "What do you want?" 5 minutes, please." Park Soo-young held up empty hands. "I represent someone who wants to help you, someone who understands what you're going through." "I don't need help. You need protection." The attorney's expression turned grave. "The Kang family doesn't let people walk away, especially not people who know as much as you do about their operations. You're a liability now, and liabilities get eliminated." Ice flooded Alina's veins. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you." Park Soo-young glanced down the hallway nervously. "Please, let me inside. What I have to tell you could save your life." Against every rational thought, Alina unhooked the chain. The attorney slipped inside, immediately moving away from the windows and setting her briefcase on the coffee table. She pulled out a tablet, fingers flying across the screen. "What I'm about to show you is highly classified," she said. "But you need to understand what you've stumbled into, who Kang Ji-hoon really is." "I already know who he is," Alina said bitterly. "A murderer. He's more than that." Park Soo-young turned the tablet around, showing photos Alina didn't understand at first. Shipping manifests, financial records, surveillance photos of men in suits exchanging briefcases. Kang Ji-hoon runs the second largest criminal organization in Seoul. But what nobody knows, not his family, not his enemies, not even most of his own people, is that for the past 2 years he's been working as an informant for the National Intelligence Service. The words didn't make sense. Alina stared at the photos, trying to process. What? He's been feeding intel to the government, helping us dismantle trafficking networks, weapons smuggling, money laundering operations. The Busan warehouse incident? Those 15 people? They weren't just traffickers, they were part of a network moving children for organ harvesting. Ji-hoon didn't leave them to die as punishment. He called the authorities. They arrived too late. The container overheated, and he's carried that guilt ever since. Alina's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the couch, brain short-circuiting. "You're lying." "I'm not." Park Soo-young swiped through more documents. "He made a deal 2 years ago after—" She hesitated. "After something happened that made him want out. The NIS offered him immunity if he helped take down the major players. He's been operating as a double agent ever since, walking a tightrope between maintaining his criminal empire and feeding us intelligence that's led to 47 arrests. Why would the NIS work with someone like him? Because sometimes you need a monster to catch monsters." The attorney's expression softened. Jihoon is complicated, violent, guilty of more crimes than I can list, but he's also been trying to dismantle the system from the inside, trying to save people nobody else can reach. That's who you fell for, Miss Reyes. Not the monster his family wants you to see. The man trying to become something else. Alina couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Everything she'd believed for the past 6 hours was fracturing, being rewritten with information that made her head spin. If this is true, she managed, why didn't he tell me? Because the second anyone knows, his cover is blown. His family would kill him. His enemies would kill him. Everyone he's been trying to protect, including you, would become targets. Park Soo-young leaned forward. He was protecting you by keeping you in the dark. But now that the Kong family's turned against him, your ignorance won't save you. They think you're just collateral damage, a woman who got too close. They'll eliminate you to send a message. So what do I do? You disappear. Tonight. We'll provide new identity, relocation assistance, protection until this blows over. No? Alina stood, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. No, I'm not running. Park Soo-young blinked. Miss Reyes, you don't understand the danger. I understand perfectly. Alina's hands were shaking, but her voice held steady. The Kong family thinks I'm weak, that I'll fold under pressure, that I'm just some naive woman who got in over her head. They're counting on me running, on me disappearing so they can go back to controlling Jihoon like a weapon. They'll kill you. Then I'll die standing my ground instead of running like they expect. She met the attorney's eyes. Where is he? Where's Jihoon? Ms. Reyes, where is he? Park Soo-young sighed, recognizing a losing battle. The NIS has him in protective custody, safe house in Yongsan, but they won't let you see him. You're a civilian, a liability. I don't care what they'll let me do. Alina grabbed her jacket, her keys, her phone, turned it back on despite the flood of messages waiting. Give me the address. This is suicide. Maybe. Alina's mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. But I'm done being the victim in everyone else's story. Done letting other people make choices that define my life. If I'm going down fighting. The attorney stared at her for a long moment. Then, against what was probably every protocol she'd been trained on, she wrote an address on a business card and handed it over. You didn't get this from me. I won't remember your name by morning. Alina pocketed the card and headed for the door, paused with her hand on the knob. The Busan warehouse, did they really arrive too late? Park Soo-young's expression was answer enough. Alina walked out into Seoul's pre-dawn darkness, hailed a cab, and gave the driver an address in Yongsan that would either save her life or end it. She didn't care which. She'd spent 6 weeks being manipulated, lied to, used as a pawn in other people's wars. First Minho, then the Kong family, even Jihoon with his necessary secrets and protective deceptions. Now it was her turn to make a choice nobody saw coming. She was walking straight into the fire that everyone, family, criminals, government agents, expected her to run from. And she was going to burn it all down. The safe house was unmarked, sandwiched between a convenience store and a shuttered restaurant in a neighborhood that looked designed to be forgotten. Alina paid the cab driver, approached the reinforced door, and knocked 3 times. A slot opened. Eyes examined her through bulletproof glass. I'm here to see Kong Jihoon, she said clearly, and I'm not leaving until I do. The eyes disappeared. Voices argued in hushed Korean on the other side. The door opened a crack, revealing a man in tactical gear holding an assault rifle with practiced ease. You can't be here. And yet, Alina planted her feet. Either you let me in, or I start screaming his name until every neighbor within 6 blocks knows this address. Your choice. The guard's expression suggested he was calculating whether shooting her would cause more problems than letting her inside. Finally, he stepped back. 5 minutes. That's it. Alina walked into a safe house that looked like a bunker. Reinforced walls, surveillance monitors, agents positioned at strategic intervals. They led her through hallways that smelled like gun oil and paranoia, stopping outside a door with a small window. Through the glass, she saw Jihoon sitting at a metal table, head in his hands, looking more wrecked than she'd ever seen him. Bruises darkened his knuckles. Exhaustion lived in every line of his body. He looked like a man who'd lost everything and was still trying to figure out how to breathe. The guard opened the door. Jihoon's head snapped up, and when his eyes found her, something broke across his face, hope mixed with horror. "What are you doing here?" He stood abruptly, chair scraping concrete. "You can't. They'll find you." "Shut up." Alina stepped inside. The guard closed the door behind her, leaving them alone in a room designed for interrogations. "I know about the NIS, about the deal, about Busan. All of it." Jihoon went pale. "Park Soo-young shouldn't have. She saved my life by telling me the truth, which is more than you did." Alina crossed her arms, holding herself together through sheer force of will. "You let me think you were a monster. Let me run. Didn't even try to explain." "Because there's no explanation that makes it better," Jihoon said hoarsely. 15 people died, Alina. I called for help and it came too late. I've replayed that night 1,000 times, wondering if I could have done something different. Opened the container sooner, found another way. But I didn't. They died. That's on me. Informant or not, I'm still responsible. And you've been trying to make up for it ever since. It's not enough. It'll never be enough. He looked at her with eyes that held too much pain. You should have stayed away. Should have let me rot here. Coming back just paints a bigger target on you. I don't care. The words came out fierce. I'm done running from things that scare me. Done letting other people decide what I can handle. You're a criminal working as an informant, carrying guilt that's eating you alive, caught between a family that wants to control you and enemies who want you dead. It's messy and violent and completely insane, and I'm staying anyway. Alina, no. You don't get to make this choice for me. She stepped closer, close enough to see his pupils dilate. 6 weeks ago, I was a woman with a boring life and a cheating boyfriend. Now I'm standing in an NIS safe house telling a crime boss turned informant that I'm not walking away despite every rational reason to run. So either accept that I'm choosing this, choosing you, or tell me to leave. But don't you dare make that choice for me. Jihoon stared at her like she'd just torn open his chest and rewritten his heart. Then he closed the distance between them and kissed her with desperate intensity. Not the controlled violence she remembered, but something raw and breaking and real. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead against hers. They're coming for us, he said quietly. My family, my enemies, everyone I've ever crossed. The second they realize I've lost NIS protection, they'll hunt me down, and anyone standing beside me. Then we don't stand still long enough to be targets. What? Alina pulled back, meeting his eyes. You spent 12 years building an empire, 2 years dismantling it from inside. You know every player, every secret, every pressure point in Seoul's underworld. So we use that. We don't wait for them to come to us, we go to them first. That's suicide. No. Her mouth curved into something sharp. That's war. And I'm done being the collateral damage in someone else's battle. Your family wants me gone. Your enemies want you dead. Then we give them exactly what they don't expect. A woman who refuses to disappear and a man who stopped playing by their rules. Jihoon studied her face, searching for sanity and finding only determination. You understand what you're proposing? The violence it'll require? The lines we'll have to cross? I understand that 6 weeks ago I was someone who played it safe, who followed rules and expected the world to be fair. That woman died the night I walked in on Minho. Alina's voice turned cold. What's standing here now is someone who's done being afraid, done being controlled. So yes, I understand, and I'm choosing this anyway. For the first time since she'd known him, Kang Jihoon smiled. Really smiled, not the controlled expression he wore like armor, but something genuine and feral and completely terrifying. Then I guess we're both insane. Probably. Alina grabbed his collar, pulling him down for another kiss. But at least we'll burn together. Outside the safe house, Seoul woke to another morning, oblivious to the fact that somewhere in Yongsan 2 people had just declared war on everyone stupid enough to think they'd go quietly. The Kong family expected surrender. The underworld expected death. The NIS expected cooperation. They were about to get none of those things. Because Alina Reyes had stopped being the woman things happened to, and Kang Jihoon had finally found someone who looked at his demons and decided to sharpen them into weapons instead of running from them. The point of no return was miles behind them. Now came the part where they made everyone else regret forcing their hand. The NIS safe house exploded into chaos 40 minutes after Alina's arrival, not with bombs, but with shouting agents and the kind of bureaucratic fury that suggested someone very important had just made a very bad phone call. Park Soo-young burst through the interrogation room door, face flushed, tablet clutched in white-knuckled hands. "We have a problem," she said, voice tight. "Multiple problems. The Kang family just filed a missing persons report on you, Alina. They're claiming Ji-hoon kidnapped you. Police are mobilizing, and—" She hesitated. "There's intel suggesting they've put a contract out. 2,000,000 won to whoever delivers proof you're dead." The words landed like ice water. Alina felt Ji-hoon's hand tighten around hers, his entire body going rigid with the kind of rage that preceded violence. "How long do we have?" he asked quietly. "Hours? Maybe less? The family knows you have NIS connections. They'll be working backwards, checking safe houses, bribing anyone they can." Park Soo-young looked between them. "We need to move you both, separate locations. Maximum security? No." Ji-hoon stood, pulling Alina up with him. "We're not hiding. We're ending this. That's not— You can't just—" The attorney struggled for words. "Ji-hoon, you're not operational anymore. You don't have resources, backup, or authorization. Going after your family is suicide." "Then I guess I'm suicidal." His voice carried the flat certainty of someone who'd already made peace with dying. "You want to dismantle Seoul's criminal networks? This is your chance. I'll give you the Kang family on a platter. Every account, every contact, every dirty secret they've buried for 30 years. But I do it my way. With her." Park Soo-young's gaze shifted to Alina. "You understand what he's proposing? This isn't witness protection. This is active combat against one of the most powerful families in Seoul. You'll be in the field, exposed. If anything goes wrong, then we improvise." Alina's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Your people have been trying to take them down for years, right? And failed because they're too well protected. Too many loyal soldiers. Too many people scared to testify. But I'm not scared anymore. And I'm betting Mrs. Kang didn't account for someone refusing to disappear." Silence stretched between them. Park Soo-young studied Alina's face like she was trying to decode whether this was courage or insanity. Finally, she exhaled hard. "If I authorize this, it's off books. No official backup. If you're caught, the NIS disavows everything. You'll be prosecuted alongside the people you're trying to take down." "Deal," Ji-hoon said immediately. "I need 48 hours to set up a tactical framework. Surveillance, electronic support, exit strategies." "We don't have 48 hours. Ji-hoon moved toward the door, pulling Alina with him. "The family's already mobilizing. We move tonight or we don't move at all." "Tonight?" Park Soo-young looked genuinely panicked. "That's impossible." "Nothing's impossible." Ji-hoon stopped at the threshold, turning back with an expression that made the attorney flinch. "You want the Kong family? Then trust me to deliver them. But we do this now, or everyone in this building becomes a target the second they breach our location." He walked out before she could respond, threading through hallways full of agents who watched them pass with expressions ranging from confusion to open hostility. Someone tried to stop them at the exit. Ji-hoon shouldered past without slowing, pulling Alina into Seoul's morning chaos. They emerged onto streets already thick with traffic and street vendors hawking breakfast. Ji-hoon hailed a cab with practiced ease, giving an address in Itaewon that meant nothing to Alina. She climbed in beside him, adrenaline making her hand shake. "What's in Itaewon?" she asked once they were moving. "Someone who owes me a favor." Ji-hoon's jaw was tight. "And enough weapons to start a small war." The cab dropped them outside a narrow building wedged between a nightclub and a tattoo parlor. Ji-hoon led her through an unmarked door, up 3 flights of stairs that smelled like cigarettes and old cooking oil, stopping at an apartment door reinforced with steel plating that suggested the occupant valued security over aesthetics. He knocked 3 times. A pause. Then twice more. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 50s wearing reading glasses and a cardigan that belonged in a library, not an arms dealer's apartment. She took one look at Ji-hoon and sighed. "I heard you were dead." "Rumors of my demise, etc." Ji-hoon pushed inside, pulling Alina after him. "I need hardware. Everything you have that's portable and untraceable." The woman, who Ji-hoon didn't bother introducing, studied Alina with sharp eyes. This the girl causing all the trouble? This is Alina. Alina, meet Jin Hana, best quartermaster in Seoul and the only person I trust not to sell me out for profit. Because you saved my son from a trafficking ring. Hana moved deeper into the apartment, which looked normal until she pressed a hidden panel that revealed a wall of weapons organized with museum precision. Doesn't mean I approve of whatever suicide mission you're planning. I need 3 handguns, ammunition, body armor if you have it, and anything that goes boom without attracting immediate police attention. Hana started pulling equipment from hidden compartments with efficient movements. The Kong family has every asset in Seoul hunting you. You know that, right? Going after them is the only option. Ji-hoon accepted a Glock, checking the magazine with muscle memory. They put a contract on Alina. That means every gangster, mercenary, and desperate criminal in this city is looking for her face. We don't end this fast. We don't end it at all. And how exactly do you plan to end a family that survived 3 decades of gang wars and government crackdowns? By giving them exactly what they want. Ji-hoon handed Alina a smaller pistol, a compact 9mm that fit her hand like it was designed for her grip. Me, broken and willing to surrender. They'll want a public execution, something that sends a message. We use that. Alina stared at the gun in her hand. You're talking about bait. I'm talking about giving them a target they can't resist while you and the NIS move on their infrastructure. He met her eyes. This only works if they're focused on me, if they think they've won. No. The word came out sharp. We're not doing the noble sacrifice bullshit. That's not a plan. That's suicide with extra steps. It's the only way, but then we find another way. Alina's hands were shaking, but her voice held steady. You think I came back just to watch you die playing hero? We do this together or we don't do it at all. Ji-hoon looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he pulled her close, pressing his forehead against hers. They'll kill you. You understand that? The second they have the chance, they'll put a bullet in your head and sleep fine that night. Then I guess we don't give them the chance. Hana cleared her throat. As touching as this is, you're both insane. But since I'm apparently enabling suicide missions today, she pulled out a tablet, fingers flying across the screen. The Kang compound is a fortress. You're not getting inside without an invitation or an army. However, she turned the screen around, showing surveillance photos. Mrs. Kang has a standing appointment every Thursday at a private spa in Gangnam. Small security detail, lots of civilian traffic. If you want to make a move, that's your window. Today's Thursday, Alina said slowly. Exactly. Hana's expression was grim. You have approximately 6 hours before she arrives. If you're going to do something catastrophically stupid, at least time it right. Ji-hoon studied the photos, jaw working. Who's her security detail? 2 bodyguards, driver, standard protocol for civilian appearances. Manageable. He looked at Alina. You sure about this? Once we start, there's no pulling back. I stopped being sure about anything the night I met you. Alina checked her pistol with hands that only shook a little. But I'm doing it anyway. They left Hana's apartment armed and dangerous, climbing into a stolen sedan Ji-hoon procured through channels Alina didn't ask about. The drive to Gangnam ate up 3 hours they spent planning in terse, efficient sentences. Ji-hoon explained the spa's layout from memory. He'd been there before, years ago, during some business negotiation that ended with bodies and silence. Alina memorized exit routes, backup plans, and the specific ways bullets behave differently than Hollywood suggested. When it starts, Ji-hoon said as they parked 2 blocks from the target, you stay behind me. You don't engage unless absolutely necessary. And if I tell you to run, I won't. Alina, I won't. She met his eyes. We survive this together, or we don't survive at all. Those are the only 2 options. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he leaned over and kissed her hard enough to bruise, tasting like desperation and determination. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he said quietly, if this goes wrong, I need you to know. Don't. Alina pressed her fingers to his lips. Don't do the goodbye speech. We're walking out of this alive, both of us. Believe that, or we've already lost. Ji-hoon nodded once. They exited the car, weapons concealed under jackets, moving through Gangnam's afternoon crowds like predators hunting bigger prey. The spa was tucked inside an upscale building, accessible only through a private entrance guarded by a board attendant who didn't look up from his phone. Jihoon walked past him with the confidence of someone who belonged. Alina followed, heart hammering, expecting alarms or gunfire. Neither came. They took the elevator to the third floor, emerging into a hallway that smelled like eucalyptus and expensive aromatherapy. "She'll be in the VIP suite," Jihoon murmured. End of the hall, 2 guards outside. "And the plan is?" Improvise convincingly. They rounded the corner. Sure enough, 2 men in dark suits flanked an ornate door, thick-necked, alert, hands positioned for quick weapon draws. The second they spotted Jihoon, recognition flashed across their faces, followed immediately by radio hands moving toward earpieces. Jihoon shot them both before they could transmit. The suppressed gunfire sounded like heavy coughs. Both guards crumpled, blood spreading across expensive carpet. Alina's stomach lurched, but she swallowed the nausea, helping Jihoon drag the bodies into a service closet. They had maybe 90 seconds before someone noticed the silence. Jihoon kicked open the VIP suite door. Mrs. Kang sat in a massage chair, eyes closed, face mask applied, completely unaware her world was about to detonate. The masseuse screamed. Jihoon gestured with his gun. "Out! Now, forget everything you saw." The woman ran. Mrs. Kang's eyes snapped open. For 1 second, pure shock registered on her face. Then it smoothed into something colder. "I should have known you'd be stupid enough to come for me directly." She didn't move from the chair, didn't show fear, just studied them with calculating contempt. "And you brought your pet. How touching." "Get up." Jihoon's voice was flat. "We're leaving. You're going to call off the contract on Alina. You're going to tell the family to stand down, and you're going to do it now, or I'll make sure everyone in Seoul knows exactly which politicians you've been bribing for the last decade." Mrs. Kang laughed. Actually laughed. "You think I'm afraid of exposure? I've survived 3 government investigations. My lawyers are better than your evidence. And even if you could hurt me politically, which you can't, you'd be dead before the story breaks." "Maybe," Jihoon stepped closer. "But I'm betting you value your life more than your pride. Are you?" She stood slowly, adjusting her robe with precise movements. "Because from where I'm standing, you look like a desperate man making desperate choices. You've lost your NIS protection, lost your empire, lost everything except the girl who's going to get you killed. So tell me, Jihoon, what exactly do you think you're threatening me with?" "This." Alina pulled out her phone, showing Mrs. Kang the screen. On it was a live feed, Park Soo-young and a team of agents raiding what looked like an office complex. "While you've been hunting us, the NIS has been dismantling your financial infrastructure. Every shell corporation, every offshore account, every piece of the empire you built on blood and blackmail. By tonight, you'll have nothing." Mrs. Kang's face went ashen. "That's impossible." "It's done." Jihoon's voice carried grim satisfaction. "We gave them everything. Account numbers, transfer records, names of everyone you've ever paid off. You wanted to remove me from power? Congratulations. You just lost yours, too." For the first time since Alina had met her, Mrs. Kang looked genuinely shaken. She sank back into the chair, processing the magnitude of what she'd just lost. Then her expression shifted, shock giving way to rage. "You destroyed your own family. I destroyed a criminal enterprise masquerading as a family." Jihoon's hand was steady on his weapon. "There's a difference." "And what? You think the government will protect you? That you'll walk away clean?" Mrs. Kang's voice turned venomous. "You're a criminal, Jihoon. A murderer. The second you're no longer useful, they'll throw you in prison beside everyone you just betrayed. You haven't won. You've just chosen a different cage." "Maybe." Jihoon glanced at Alina. "But at least I chose it." The door behind them exploded inward, not metaphorically. Actual C4 charges blew the hinges apart, sending smoke and debris flooding the VIP suite. Alina hit the ground instinctively, ears ringing, lungs burning. Through the chaos, she heard gunfire, automatic weapons shredding furniture and walls. Someone screamed. Might have been her. Jihoon hauled her behind an overturned massage table, returning fire toward shapes moving through the smoke. "Out the window! Go!" "Not without you." "Go." More gunfire. The table splintered under impact. Alina scrambled toward the window, realizing too late that they were 3 stories up with no fire escape. She looked back desperately and found Ji-hoon bleeding from his shoulder, still firing, buying her seconds they didn't have. Mrs. Kang was gone. Disappeared into the smoke like she'd never been there. Ji-hoon, jump! The window shattered under her weight. Alina fell, hit a second-floor awning hard enough to crack ribs, rolled off into a dumpster that smelled like death but broke her fall enough to survive. She crawled out, gasping, tasting blood, hearing sirens converging from every direction. Above her, gunfire continued. Then silence. Terrible, absolute silence. Ji-hoon? Her voice came out broken. Ji-hoon? No answer. Just smoke pouring from the broken window and the sound of boots on stairs. Alina forced herself to move, stumbling into an alley, using walls for support while her body screamed protest. She had to get back inside, had to find him, had to... Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Rooftop. Hurry. She didn't question it, just ran, using emergency stairs designed for fire escapes, taking them 2 at a time despite her body's protests. Burst onto the rooftop to find Ji-hoon leaning against the access door, blood soaking through his shirt, looking half dead, but alive. You jumped out a window, he said, almost smiling. You told me to. Alina crossed to him, hand shaking as she examined his shoulder wound. Who were they? Volkov's people. Russian syndicate. Mrs. Kang must have made a deal. They help eliminate us. They get our territory. He winced as she probed the wound. It's through and through. I'll live. We need to get you medical. We need to get out of Seoul. Ji-hoon grabbed her wrist, urgency cutting through pain. Mrs. Kang escaped, which means she's already calling in every favor she has. The contract on you just went from 2 million to 10. We're not safe anywhere in this city. Then where do we go? Busan. I have a contact there. Someone who can get us out of the country, if necessary. He struggled to stand, leaning heavily on her. But we have to move now, before... A helicopter appeared over the building, spotlight blazing down on them. Not police, private security, the kind you hired when you wanted people disappeared permanently. Ji-hoon raised his weapon. Run! Not this again. Run! Gunfire erupted from the helicopter, chewing up concrete around them. Alina grabbed Ji-hoon's good arm and dragged him toward the opposite edge of the building. Below, an adjacent rooftop waited, 6 feet away, 4 feet down, totally possible if you ignored physics and sanity. We can't make that jump, she said. We don't have a choice. More gunfire. The helicopter was circling back. Ji-hoon pulled her close, blood soaking into her jacket, his heartbeat rapid against her chest. Together, he said. Together, she agreed. They ran. Concrete gave way to air. For one weightless moment, Alina understood exactly how stupid they were, jumping between buildings while bleeding and hunted and completely outgunned. Then impact drove the thought from her mind as they hit the adjacent roof, rolling, bones protesting, miraculously not dead. The helicopter pursued. They scrambled for cover behind industrial HVAC units, while bullets sparked off metal. Ji-hoon returned fire with his remaining ammunition, forcing the helicopter to bank away. Next time we plan a war, Alina gasped, maybe include an exit strategy. Next time? Ji-hoon's laugh turned into a cough. You're planning another one? Not the point. We're not getting out of this. He said it flat. Certain. They have air support, we're injured, low on ammunition. Even if we get off this roof, they'll hunt us through every street in Gangnam. We need... His phone rang. In the middle of the firefight, with helicopters circling and sirens converging, his phone rang. Ji-hoon stared at it like it was a hallucination, then answered, This is a really bad time. He went still, listening. His expression shifted from exhausted to something Alina couldn't read. When he hung up, his eyes found hers. That was Park Soo-young. The NIS just arrested Mrs. Kang. They got her fleeing the spa, and... He hesitated. Minho turned himself in, voluntary testimony. He's giving them everything about the family's operations in exchange for immunity. Alina couldn't process it. Minho said he was tired of being the villain in everyone's story. Wanted to do one decent thing before... Ji-hoon's voice cracked. Before his mother destroyed what was left of their family. He's testifying against her. Against all of them. The helicopter circled back, spotlight finding them again. But this time, police helicopters accompanied it, loudspeakers blaring commands to stand down. Ji-hoon's phone rang again. Park Soo-young saying the Russians had been flagged, that they'd call off the pursuit or face international prosecution. Slowly, impossibly, the private helicopter peeled away. The gunfire stopped. Seoul's night air filled with nothing but sirens and breathing. Alina sat down hard on the rooftop, adrenaline draining so fast she nearly passed out. Ji-hoon collapsed beside her, bleeding and broken and alive. They stayed there while police swarmed the building below, while EMTs rushed up the stairs, while Park Soo-young herself emerged from the chaos with an expression that suggested she'd aged 10 years in the past 6 hours. "You're both insane," she said, then immediately called for paramedics. "But you did it? The Kang family is finished, accounts frozen, leadership arrested, half the organization just flipped to save themselves. It's over." "Over," Alina repeated numbly. The word didn't feel real. Ji-hoon's hand found hers, bloody and shaking but solid. "Not over, just beginning." She looked at him, at this man who'd started as a stranger in a club and become the reason she learned to load a weapon, the reason she jumped between buildings, the reason she finally understood that sometimes the worst decisions led to the only destinations worth reaching. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now?" Ji-hoon's mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Now we figure out how to build a life that doesn't involve getting shot at every 48 hours. Sounds boring. Sounds perfect. EMTs descended with stretchers and urgent Korean. Park Soo-young was already on her phone, negotiating immunity deals and witness protection protocols. Police photographed the scene while federal agents cordoned off evidence. Seoul kept moving around them, oblivious to the fact that one of its most powerful criminal families had just imploded. And on that rooftop, while medics bandaged wounds and measured vitals, Alina Reyes held hands with Kang Ji-hoon and realized something terrifying. She'd survived. They'd survived. Now came the harder part, learning how to live. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and second chances. Alina woke to fluorescent lights burning her retinas and the steady beep of monitors measuring whether she was alive enough to keep trying. Her ribs screamed protest when she tried to sit up. Bruises mapped her body like a topographical chart of violence survived. Through the window, Seoul sprawled beneath gray morning clouds that looked like the city was holding its breath. A nurse appeared, checked vitals with efficient hands, and disappeared without conversation. 5 minutes later, Park Soo-young walked in carrying coffee and the exhausted expression of someone who'd been awake for 36 hours straight. "You look like hell," the attorney said, which was rich coming from someone whose suit looked slept in and whose eyes held the kind of fatigue that lived in bone marrow. "Thanks." Alina's voice came out rough. "Where's Ji-hoon?" "3 doors down, recovering from surgery. The bullet damaged his shoulder more than he let on." Park Soo-young sat in the visitor's chair, handing over coffee that tasted like salvation. "He's been asking about you every 20 minutes since he woke up. Doctors had to threaten restraints to keep him in bed." Despite everything, the pain, the exhaustion, the fact that her entire life had detonated in the span of 6 weeks, Alina smiled. "That sounds like him." "Mrs. Kang is in custody. 23 counts ranging from money laundering to conspiracy to commit murder. Her lawyers are already negotiating, but the evidence is overwhelming. She'll die in prison." Park Soo-young's expression was grim satisfaction. "The rest of the family is scrambling. Half of them are flipping, trading testimony for reduced sentences. The other half are fleeing the country. Either way, the Kang criminal empire is finished." "And Minho?" "Immunity deal went through. He's cooperating fully. Gave us bank records, contact lists, details about operations nobody else would have known. He'll testify at his mother's trial." The attorney paused. "He asked to see you, when you're ready." Alina stared at her coffee. Part of her wanted to refuse, to leave Minho in the wreckage of his choices and never look back. But another part, the part that had learned hard lessons about the weight of consequences and the cost of closure, recognized that some conversations needed to happen even when they hurt. "Maybe," she said quietly. "Eventually. Not today." Park Soo-young nodded, understanding written across her tired face. "The NIS is offering full witness protection. New identities, relocation assistance, financial support while you rebuild. You'd be safe, both of you. No one from your old lives would be able to find you. That sounds like running. That sounds like survival. What's the difference? The attorney studied her for a long moment. I suppose that depends on whether you're running towards something or away from it. Before Alina could respond, the door opened and Jihoon appeared, leaning heavily on a crutch, left arm in a sling, looking like death warmed over and refusing to apologize for it. A nurse chased after him, scolding in rapid Korean, but he ignored her with the practiced ease of someone who'd been ignoring sensible advice his entire life. "You're supposed to be in bed," Park Soo-young said. "So is she." Jihoon's eyes found Alina, and something in his expression made her chest tight. "Didn't stop either of us." The nurse gave up, muttering about stubborn patients and liability waivers. Park Soo-young stood, grabbing her briefcase. "I'll give you two some privacy. But Jihoon, the prosecutors want to debrief you this afternoon, and there are decisions that need to be made about your legal status. We can buy you immunity for cooperation, but you'll need to testify, against everyone, including family." "I know." His voice carried the weight of someone who'd already accepted that particular cross to bear. "I'll be there." Park Soo-young left. Silence filled the room, broken only by monitor beeps and the distant sounds of hospital machinery. Jihoon lowered himself into the chair the attorney had vacated, moving with careful precision that suggested his injuries went deeper than the visible bandages. "You jumped out a window," he said finally. "You told me to." Alina set down her coffee. "Besides, you jumped between buildings. I think we're even." "We're insane." "We've established that." She studied his face, the exhaustion carved into every line, the pain he was trying to hide. The way he looked at her like she was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting. "Are you okay?" "Define okay?" Jihoon's mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I just helped dismantle my own family, sent my sister-in-law to prison, watched my nephew turn informant against his mother. I'm facing testimony that'll put me on the stand admitting to crimes that should earn me a life sentence. And the only thing I care about is whether you're planning to take that witness protection deal and disappear where I can't follow." The admission hung between them, raw, honest, terrifying in its vulnerability. Alina had watched this man orchestrate criminal operations, survive assassination attempts, and walk into gunfire without flinching. But asking her to stay clearly scared him more than any of it. "I'm not disappearing," she said quietly. "I already told you. We survived together or not at all. That was before." Jihoon's hand flexed on the crutch. "Before you nearly died. Before you had to shoot at people. Before you saw exactly what kind of violence my world demands. Park Soo-young is offering you an out. A clean break. A chance to go back to being the person you were before all this." "I can't go back to being her." Alina's voice was steady despite the emotions churning in her chest. "That woman died the night I walked in on Minho. Maybe she was suffocating long before that, playing it safe, following rules, expecting the world to reward good behavior. But she's gone. What's sitting here now is someone who learned to load a weapon, jump out of windows, and stand beside the most dangerous man in Seoul without flinching. So no, I'm not taking the witness protection deal. I'm staying." "But I'm..." "Mom." "Why?" The word came out desperate. "You could have a normal life. Find someone who doesn't come with a body count and federal testimony. Someone safe." "Safe is boring." Alina reached across the space between them, taking his hand. His fingers curled around hers like she was the only thing keeping him anchored. "And I didn't fall for safe. I fell for the man who saw me at my worst and offered escape instead of pity. Who defended me at family dinners even when it cost him everything. Who's been trying to dismantle a criminal empire from the inside because he couldn't live with the violence anymore. That's who I'm choosing. Not in spite of the complications, but because of them." Jihoon stared at their joined hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red-rimmed. "I don't know how to be someone who doesn't hurt people for a living." "Then we figure it out together." She squeezed his fingers, one terrible decision at a time. For the first time since the rooftop, Jihoon smiled, really smiled, the kind that reached his eyes and made him look years younger. "You're sure about this? About me? I jumped out of a third-story window for you. I think that answers the question." He laughed, rough and broken. then pulled her close with his good arm. They stayed like that while Sol woke up outside, while nurses made rounds, while the machinery of justice ground forward to dismantle everything the Kang family had built on blood and fear. 3 days later, Alina was discharged with prescriptions for pain management and instructions to avoid strenuous activity for 6 weeks. Ji-hoon left the hospital the same afternoon, against medical advice because apparently neither of them was capable of following sensible guidelines. Park Soo-young met them outside with a car and bad news. "The Russians are making noise," she said as they climbed in. "Volkov's pissed about losing the Kang territory contract. He's putting pressure on the NIS to produce you both for questioning about the spa incident. Claims you murdered his men in cold blood." "They shot first," Alina said, "which we know. But Volkov has political connections, enough to make this complicated." The attorney navigated Seoul traffic with aggressive precision. "We can protect you during testimony, but after that, you'll need to stay low profile. No public appearances, no social media. Basically, you'll be living like ghosts until the legal dust settles." "How long? Months? Maybe years?" Alina felt Ji-hoon tense beside her. This was the price, not just testimony, but permanent visibility, permanent target, the kind of consequence that didn't fade with time. "There's another option," Park Soo-young continued carefully. "The NIS has contacts in Singapore, Hong Kong, places where you could relocate with legitimate cover identities. Not witness protection exactly, but close. You'd be starting over, but you'd be together and safe." "Safe," Ji-hoon repeated, like he was tasting the word. "I spent 12 years being dangerous. Maybe it's time to learn what safe feels like." Alina studied his profile. "You'd leave Seoul? Just walk away from everything?" "Everything here is blood and ghosts." His voice was quiet. "Maybe we build something new. Somewhere nobody knows our names or what we've done. Somewhere we get to be boring." "I don't think we're capable of boring." "Then we fail spectacularly trying." He turned to face her. "What do you think?" What did she think? 6 weeks ago, Alina's biggest decision was which marketing campaign to prioritize. Now she was contemplating international relocation with a former crime boss turned government informant, while multiple criminal organizations wanted them dead. The absurdity should have been paralyzing. Instead, it felt like possibility. "I think," she said slowly, "that Seoul holds nothing but bad memories and worse futures. I think starting over sounds terrifying and impossible, and exactly like something we'd attempt. So yes, let's be boring together in Singapore." Park Soo-young allowed herself a small smile. "I'll make the arrangements." The legal proceedings consumed the next 4 months. Alina testified 3 times, twice in depositions, once at Mrs. Kang's trial. She sat in a witness box and described walking into family dinners, falling for the wrong man, discovering criminal empires hiding beneath expensive suits. She watched prosecutors dismantle the Kang family piece by piece, using testimony and evidence to build cases that would echo through Seoul's underworld for years. Minho testified for 6 hours straight. Alina watched via closed-circuit video, seeing him stripped of swagger and arrogance, reduced to someone genuinely trying to account for his choices. He described his mother's operations with clinical precision, never flinching from his own complicity. When the prosecutors asked about Alina, his voice cracked. "I loved her," he said quietly. "I thought I did anyway, but I loved the idea of her more than the reality. Loved having someone stable while I played at being dangerous. I didn't realize what I was throwing away until I watched my uncle willing to burn everything down to keep her safe. That's when I understood the difference between possession and love. I possessed her. He loved her. And I'll spend the rest of my life knowing I destroyed something good because I was too cowardly to appreciate it." After the video ended, Alina sat in the prosecutor's office and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just exhaustion and the distant recognition that Minho's self-awareness came too late to matter. "Do you want to see him?" Park Soo-young asked. "He's requested multiple times." "No," the answer came easily. "He gets to live with his choices. I get to move forward with mine. We don't need closure. We need distance." The attorney nodded, understanding. Ji-hoon's testimony was different. Brutal. He sat in that witness box for 9 hours, and cataloged 12 years of violence with unflinching honesty. He described murders, extortion, territorial wars fought in shadows while Seoul slept. He named names, exposed operations, pulled back the curtain on an empire built on suffering. And when the defense attorneys tried to paint him as a mastermind, orchestrating everything from prison, he shut them down with terrifying calm. "I'm not the mastermind," he said flatly. "I'm the weapon the Kang family pointed at problems they couldn't solve legally. I did terrible things, inexcusable things, things I'll answer for whether you sentence me or not. But I'm here now, testifying, dismantling everything I built. That doesn't absolve me. It just means I'm finally choosing to stop being the monster they needed me to be." The courtroom went silent. Mrs. Kang, sitting with her defense team, looked at her brother-in-law with such concentrated hatred that Alina felt it from the gallery. But Ji-hoon never looked away, never apologized, just bore witness to his own sins with the kind of accountability that courtrooms rarely saw. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Mrs. Kang received 4 consecutive life sentences without parole. The remaining family members got decades each. The empire that had survived 3 generations collapsed in a single afternoon. Ji-hoon received immunity in exchange for testimony. But the immunity came with conditions: permanent monitoring, travel restrictions, mandatory check-ins with federal authorities. He'd never be truly free, just less imprisoned than the alternative. "I can live with that," he told Alina afterwards, standing outside the courthouse while Seoul's autumn wind scattered leaves across the steps. "Freedom's overrated anyway," says the man who spent 12 years trapped in his own empire. "Exactly." He pulled her close with his good arm. The shoulder had healed wrong, left him with limited mobility he'd probably carry forever. "I know what cages look like. This one comes with you in it. That makes it bearable." They left Seoul on a December morning wrapped in fog and fresh snowfall. No dramatic goodbyes, no fanfare. Just 2 people with new passports and one-way tickets to Singapore, carrying the accumulated weight of 6 months that felt like 6 lifetimes. On the plane, somewhere over the East China Sea, Alina stared out the window at clouds that looked like cotton and thought about the woman she'd been. The marketing executive who played by rules and expected fairness, who thought cheating was the worst betrayal she'd experienced, who'd never held a weapon or kissed a criminal or learned that sometimes the worst decisions led to the only destinations worth reaching. That woman was gone, buried somewhere between a Gangnam nightclub and a hospital rooftop. What sat in this airplane seat was someone harder, more scarred, capable of violence and tenderness in equal measure. Someone who'd looked at the most dangerous man in Seoul and decided he was worth jumping out windows for. "Regrets?" Ji-hoon asked, voice low. Alina turned from the window, studying his face. The scar on his jaw had faded, but not disappeared. Exhaustion lived permanently in the lines around his eyes. He'd never be the smooth criminal who'd offered her escape in a club. Too much had happened, too many choices made under fire. But somehow, he was more real because of it. "Hundreds," she said honestly, "but not the ones you're thinking." "What do you regret?" "Not walking out on Minho sooner, letting fear keep me small for so long, waiting for betrayal to teach me I was capable of more than I believed." She laced her fingers through his. "But I don't regret you. Even the parts that nearly killed us. Especially those parts." Ji-hoon's thumb traced patterns on her knuckles. "I regret the Busan warehouse. Every day. The people I couldn't save because I called too late. I'll carry that until I stop breathing." "I know. I regret not walking away from my family sooner, not finding you before I became someone who'd done unforgivable things. I regret that you had to see violence and survive danger because I couldn't protect you from my own consequences." "But you don't regret us." "No." His voice was absolute. "Never us." Singapore welcomed them with humidity and architecture that climbed toward clouds like prayers made of steel and glass. Park Soo-young had arranged an apartment in a neighborhood full of expats and anonymity. No one looked twice at another foreign couple building a life from scratch. The NIS provided initial funds, employment contacts, the infrastructure needed to disappear into legitimate existence. Alina found work at a small marketing firm that didn't ask too many questions about her gap in employment. She told them she'd been traveling, finding herself, recovering from a bad breakup. All technically true. just missing the parts about testifying against organized crime and learning to shoot. Ji-hoon struggled more. His entire identity had been violence and control. Stripping that away left someone who didn't know how to be ordinary. He tried consulting work, import-export, legitimately this time, but kept having panic attacks when clients raised their voices. The therapist Park Soo-young recommended said it was PTSD. 12 years of hypervigilance rewiring his brain to see threats everywhere. He'd probably carry it forever, learning to manage symptoms instead of cure them. Some nights he woke screaming, trapped in nightmares about shipping containers and bodies he couldn't save. Alina learned to wake him gently, to ground him with touch and steady breathing, to sit with him while Seoul's ghosts released their grip. Some nights she had her own demons. She'd dream about Mrs. Kang's cold eyes promising death, about jumping out windows that never ended, about gunfire that echoed endlessly through marble hallways. Ji-hoon would hold her through the shaking, whispering that they were safe. They'd survived. Nobody was coming for them. They were both lying, and they both knew it. Safety was illusion. Survival was temporary. But they pretended anyway, because the alternative was paralysis. 6 months into Singapore, on an evening that smelled like tropical rain and street food, Ji-hoon came home carrying a small black box. Not jewelry, something else. He set it on their kitchen counter with careful precision. "What is this?" Alina asked. "A choice." He opened the box, revealing a key. Simple, unadorned, attached to an address tag. "There's a house, small, on the outskirts of the city. Garden space, quiet neighborhood, far enough from everything that we could pretend we're normal. We're not normal. No, but we could build something that looks like it from a distance." Ji-hoon's expression was vulnerable in ways she rarely saw. "I'm asking if you want to stop running, plant roots somewhere, see if we can grow something that isn't just survival." Alina picked up the key, feeling its weight. This was the offer, permanence instead of temporary. Commitment to building a life instead of just outlasting consequences. It should have terrified her. A year ago, it would have. "Show me," she said. The house was exactly what he'd described. Small, clean, surrounded by greenery that suggested someone cared about beauty for beauty's sake. Inside smelled like fresh paint and possibility. Empty rooms waiting to be filled with furniture, memories, the accumulated debris of lives actually lived instead of just survived. They walked through it in silence, Alina cataloging details. The kitchen big enough for actual cooking, the bedroom that caught afternoon light, the small office space where she could work remotely. Ji-hoon followed a step behind, watching her reactions like he was trying to decode whether this was enough. Whether she could see a future here. In the empty living room, with Singapore's evening sun slanting through windows, Alina turned to face him. "This is terrifying," she said. "I know. We have no idea if we'll survive long term. No guarantee the past won't catch up. No promise that we're capable of ordinary happiness." "I know that too, but I want to try." She closed the distance between them, hands finding his face. "I want to fill this house with terrible furniture we argue about. I want to learn how to cook meals that aren't just takeout. I want to wake up beside you on boring Tuesdays and not wonder if someone's coming to kill us. I want ordinary, with you, even if we fail spectacularly at it." Ji-hoon kissed her with the kind of desperate relief that came from someone who'd expected rejection and received grace instead. When they broke apart, both smiling through emotions too complicated to name, he said, "We're going to be so bad at this. Absolutely terrible. But we'll do it together." "Together," Alina agreed. They bought the house with money saved from legitimate work and NIS assistance funds. Spent weeks picking out furniture that matched nothing, arguing about paint colors, learning to be domestic in ways neither had practiced. Alina discovered she liked gardening. Something about making things grow instead of watching them die felt redemptive. Ji-hoon learned to cook, badly at first, improving with practice until he could make meals that didn't poison them. They hosted dinner parties with colleagues who knew nothing about their past. They took weekend trips to nearby islands. They did taxes and grocery shopping and all the mundane maintenance of existence. And slowly, incrementally, the hypervigilance faded. Not completely. Probably never completely. Ji-hoon still checked exits in every room. Alina still flinched at loud noises. They both slept better with the bedroom door locked and weapons within reach. old habits dying slowly. But they laughed more, touched without urgency. Learned that intimacy wasn't just about surviving crises together, but about building small joys in the spaces between. A year into Singapore, on an evening that smelled like jasmine and approaching rain, they sat on their back patio watching the garden grow. Alina had her head on Ji-hoon's shoulder, his arm around her waist, both of them existing in comfortable silence. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked eventually. "The danger, the adrenaline, the version of you that ran an empire." Ji-hoon was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes. The power was addictive. Knowing I could make things happen with a phone call, being feared instead of invisible, but—" He tightened his arm around her. "I don't miss the cost. The constant looking over my shoulder. The knowledge that every relationship was transactional. The way violence became background noise instead of emergency. So no, I don't miss it enough to go back." "Good." Alina kissed his jaw, right over the scar that would never fully fade. "Because I've gotten used to boring. It suits you. Liar, complete liar." She smiled against his skin. "But I'm committed to the bit." Thunder rumbled in the distance. The first drops of rain started falling, turning their garden into something lush and alive. They stayed outside anyway, getting soaked, not caring, existing in the kind of moment that felt too fragile to leave. Later, inside their home with its mismatched furniture and accumulated imperfections, Ji-hoon pulled Alina close and said something he'd never quite articulated before. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not running. For staying when every rational instinct told you to leave. For looking at the worst parts of me and deciding I was worth fighting for anyway." His voice caught. "I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I'll spend every boring, ordinary day trying to be worth it." Alina's eyes burned. She pressed her face into his chest, breathing in the scent of him, no longer expensive cologne and gun oil, but laundry detergent and the particular smell of home. "You already are," she whispered. "You were from the moment you offered escape instead of pity. From the moment you defended me at that terrible family dinner. From the moment you chose me over an empire you'd spent 12 years building. You're worth it, Ji-hoon. You always have been." They stood like that while rain hammered the roof, while Singapore slept around them, while the life they'd built from wreckage and terrible decisions continued to prove that sometimes the worst beginning led to the best ending. Neither of them was fixed. They still had nightmares, still carried scars, still struggled with the weight of everything they'd done and survived. But they were healing. Together. Building something that looked like peace from a distance and felt like home up close. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Years later, when people asked how they met, Alina would smile and say it was complicated. Ji-hoon would add that complicated was an understatement. They'd leave it at that, letting strangers fill in the blanks with boring stories about dating apps, or mutual friends, or chance encounters at coffee shops. The truth was theirs alone, a story written in blood and betrayal and jumping between buildings. A story about a woman who learned she was capable of more than she believed, and a man who learned to be someone other than the monster his family needed. A story that started with the worst decision either of them ever made and ended with a life worth living. Not perfect. Never perfect. But real. And in the end, after everything they'd survived, reality was the greatest victory of all. On quiet evenings, when the world was soft and forgiving, Alina would catch Ji-hoon looking at her with an expression that held everything they'd been through: the club, the betrayal, the violence, the testimony, the choice to build something new from ruins. And she'd look back with the same recognition, the same gratitude for surviving long enough to find each other. They'd been broken separately. They'd healed together. And somewhere between those two states, they'd discovered that love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone whose damage fit your own in ways that made both of you stronger. That was the story. That was the truth. That was how Alina Reyes, former marketing executive, survivor of betrayal, woman who once jumped out a third-story window, learned to stop running from chaos and started building a home inside it instead. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.